Hello out there, my name is Laolu Akonde and you are on to Inside Sources. Today I have a co-host who will take a portion of my take.
In commemoration of the Children's Day celebration for this year, I have 11-year-old pupil, Miss Praise Christopher, being my co-host for my take segment.
Inside Sources will be right back.
And here is my take for today, titled, Policy Tips President Tinubu Can Still Adopt 2 years After, Part 2. Last week, we started a two-part commentary on policy ideas the Tinubu presidency can still pursue as the administration marks 2 years in office, which was due yesterday, Thursday, May 29th. They are packaged in 6 broad categories: security, poverty alleviation, energy, productivity, human capital development, and governance. We have discussed all but human capital development and governance issues. Here's a recap. On security, we said the president should ramp up the numbers of boots on the ground, consider the use of non-conventional fighting groups, and ensure the implementation of state police, or decentralizing the Nigerian police force. On poverty alleviation, we said the least the Tinubu administration can do is to demonstrate an active concern, showcasing its compassion and resolve by reinvigorating social investment programs. On energy, we said the president should conclude the Siemens initiative speedily, implement the idea of mini-grids quickly, no longer depend on a sole national grid, and urgently facilitate the emergence of integrated power companies who will generate and distribute electricity in specific localities and regions all by themselves. On productivity, we said this was an imperative, as we need to put our teeming population to work in at least 3 critical areas: agriculture, manufacturing, and technology. We concluded by saying these are imperatives the government must consider because we can't continue to take poison and expect not to die. Now handing over to the host, Mr. Laolu Akonde.
Thank you, Praise, for that portion of my take. Now, I conclude the take. On human capital development, here we must acknowledge one important point, that state governments have considerable roles and responsibilities in this matter. And we must continue to drive the argument, even if stridently, that our state governors must also wake up to their responsibilities in the area of human capital development. Our public healthcare system and public schools are, for the most part in this country, currently in a rut. And state governors are the ones that we must call out the most. Now, for the Tinubu administration, perhaps the 2 most impactful ministers without any questions around their integrities are the Education Minister, Dr. Tuji Alausa, and Professor Ali Patel, and they are doing an excellent job. But we should add that Dr. Patel should find the courage to implement a full-fledged national health insurance reform that will be affordable to the mass of the Nigerian people. It could be a universal health coverage plan where those who can't afford a decent health care are nonetheless taken care of. That policy document exists in the presidency. We also note the significant 800 billion Hope Education Basic Education Reform Program, which is aimed as strengthening access, equity, and measurable learning outcomes in our schools. What we should then add is that both the federal government and the state government should collaborate to improve the working conditions of basic education teachers significantly so that we can attract more talent to become teachers in our public schools. This is certainly one major factor in the effort to reform basic education in our country, and the Tinubu presidency should lead the charge. And now we come finally to governance. The most important point about governance is that there has to be a more effective coordination of government business, a situation where it will take almost a year for a presidential directive or for a FEC directive to be implemented is below par, and that ought to be corrected. For the president, in the area of coordination, to engage his vice president more so that he can do a better job in coordinating the ministers who will have to work together in some of the policy tips that we have given. For instance, in the area of driving productivity, there will be several ministers that will be involved. And so it is useful to have a vice president who has a convening authority to ensure that there is more coordination in government. Also, in the area of governance, government has to take the issue of corruption more seriously. If we don't deal with corruption, corruption will deal with us. The president said it recently during the APC National Summit that we have to deal with indiscipline and we have to deal with corruption. The Tinubu administration ought to do more and become more bullish in the area of dealing with corruption. The final point around the issue of governance is that the government, whether it's at state and federal levels, should show more sensitivity to the pain that people are going through. This is no time for government to show ostentation. This is one area that the Tinubu administration can show more leadership and example so that Nigerian people can feel that they are with the government and the government is with the people in dealing with the challenges of the time. And there you have it, Inside Sources. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources as we continue our review of the 2-year anniversary of the Tinubu administration. I have a guest who is a professor of social ethics and economist, and who is currently the Walter G. Muelda Professor of Social Ethics at the Boston University, where he is also the Director of African Studies. I'd like to welcome back to Inside Sources, Professor Nimi Wariboko. Prof, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for having me.
All right.
Glad to be here.
We have been looking at the Tinubu administration's 2-year anniversary, which fell due exactly yesterday, the 29th of May. So I'd like to have your take. What will be your opening shot if you are asked, how do you think the president and his administration has performed in these 2 years?
Well, on a short note, I would say it's about, I mean, it's a C plus at best. They are not yet in the range of the Bs or the As. Yeah, I'll give them a C plus.
Okay.
Which in the American system, it's about getting upper 60s to early 70s in terms of of the score.
So you think that this is essentially an average performance?
Well, it depends on how you regard failure. In the Nigerian system that we went to school, C is taken as a pass. But in graduate school, especially at the PhD level, if you get less than B plus, most PhD program will throw you out.
Okay. Anyway, so the presidency has 2 years, but let's get into the details. The Financial Times also this week came up with an opinion that said that this was an editorial opinion piece that essentially said the policies that the president has undertaken seems to them to be the right policies, but the impact on the people is still very painful. But they urge the president to continue on those track of policy, especially, of course, the deregulation, this removal of the subsidy, the stability in the naira, of the foreign exchange. So I know, Prof, that you are also an economist. So let us open the discussion in the details. How do you review the economic situation in the country in the last 2 years?
So the way, since the president is an accountant, in my head, I came up with a language that he will understand: credit and debit, right? So in that sense, to his credit, I would say his administration communicates his policy well, as Steve for the first letter in credit, right? So they communicate what they're going to do very well. Number two, they've undertaken very good reforms, right? And number three, for the E, they are creating an enabling environment, right? And then for the D, it's, I would say, digitization of the economy. There seems to be conscious and following up with that. And then for the I, to his credit, is the infrastructure. They seem to have laid out an infrastructure plan. And then finally, the T, the credit, I would say, for the first time, they have a telos, means a purpose, a goal. I use the word telos because I want to make it match with the credit. A telos, they have a purpose. So if you look at it that way, like the Financial Times, yes, one could say we could sense where they're going. But then the president is an accountant. So if you take that as credit, what is the debit side? And at the end, we can say, does the credit match the debit for it to have a balanced book, right? And that's where we come in. So on the debit side, we'll say D, we'll say, how is he handling democracy? Because for me, democracy is integral to development. If a president is doing something that may threaten democratic reforms or democratic processes, in the long run, it may undermine our ability to develop, right? And then on the debit, the next letter is E. If you look at what is the ethics, general ethics in the country, and I don't think our morality or our ethics has changed, in the sense that we still see government officials, politicians, looking at the state as their main means of production and milking the state that way. And then overall morality of the economy, there is no turnaround. There is no indication that this president is capable or is turning the society towards a better moral standing. Then for the B, I will call it biopolitics. Now I'm using biopolitics in a special sense, not in the sense of the French philosopher Foucault, who talks about that how does a state takes control of the life of the people. But I'm looking at it about how does the policies of the president affect life as a whole of the individuals. And on that level, then that is the key. His policies have increased or elevated suffering, and it has made suffering into a state policy, as if they take pleasure in the suffering of Nigerians. They are not focused on the well-being of Nigeria, or so far their policies have not resulted in better welfare for the people. So the people have been devastated. Then in terms of the debit, right, the next letter is I. The insecurity in the country has not improved. Then we can also take the I to mean insensitivity. There's a sense that this government is insensitive to the plight of the people. This government, in some ways, is insensitive to the pluralism of the country. This government is insensitive to the way the different ethnic configuration have worked together and wants to work together. There's a certain level of insensitivity. Then the other part, the debit, is one thing is important to economists and development economists and people who study ethics of development is the issue of time orientation. The economy, everybody is still focused on the short run. And that's why people, if you look at, people are not interested in investing for a long for the long term. Young ones are looking for way out, means that people do not take the future of the country seriously. So if for an economy like ours, it's very important that people believe in the future. They should believe that tomorrow is going to be better than today, and therefore they are ready to make long-term investment. They are ready to grow roots in the economy. But when you see even inflation is in a sense a function of time orientation, because you want to get quick returns. So we are doing things in a way, if you ask the average Nigerian, right, if they're doing business with you, they want to have their profit today, not wait for tomorrow. And so when you see people in a society are focused on the short term, if you're going to raise the inflation, the interest rate would high. Even the person giving you the money to do business is not sure whether tomorrow you'll be around to pay him or her back. So they want to charge the high, as much interest rates as they can. So the high interest rate in the economy and everything tells you that people are not ready to take the long-term view. And he has not turned this around. And as long as he has not turned this around, it means that our focus on development is still very short-term oriented. Our personal decisions are still short-term oriented. People in government are focused on only what they can get today. So if you then take the debit and the credit, there is a mismatch. They don't balance. But they come close. That's why it's a C, because it's the debit way more than the credit, and especially the part of the debit that says, how does your policy affect human life and human well-being? If we take an index of that, we should stop focusing only on GDP. We should also focus on gross domestic happiness. So it's because economists have a tendency of focusing on raw statistics, right? All those numbers. But how does it translate into the happiness, into the human flourishing, or into what philosophers will call eudaimonia, the blessed happiness of the people? And I think people are not generally happy.
Excellent review. Now, I wanted to say that in terms of the gross domestic happiness, I like the way you put it.
Yes.
Now, so the argument will seem to be that, look, for a while in this country, decades, or even much more longer than that, the right things have not been done. And now that we are doing the right thing, there's going to be a cost, for it. Do you accept that explanation that the suffering that is, that I don't think anybody is contesting it, even on the side of the government, they are saying that it's just for a time and that we are almost turning the corner. Do you accept that explanation that, look, we cannot do without having that suffering for now?
Anytime you make an economic policy, there are going to be gainers and losers, right? So the losers, you can tell them, well, you bear the suffering, and then eventually we're going to make gains and it's going to compensate you. But the question is, do they even know the time? Because we can bear suffering if we know it's we are around the corner, but we could be saying around the corner for the next 100 years, right? So we don't know, because people forget that at the time of American independence in 1976, Argentina and Brazil were better economies, right? But they have been in this perpetual hope of becoming great nations. They are not. So for the fact that we are turning the corner, Nigeria has been trying to turn the corner for 60 years. What tells us that they are doing anything different? But so the timing is not there. But the way to assess the timing is that if people really feel we are turning the corner, then the issue of time orientation, the way the society orients its time to the future, the past, the present, and the future, we are seeing a society so much focused on the present. Therefore, people are not believing the argument about time. Then in terms of cost, yes, there is a cost, but there are certain costs that are unbearable. And the issue is if you're going to ask your people to bear certain costs, right? For me, there should be two ways of looking at it, right? Is the cost going to kill them? If you are going to give me a medicine to cure malaria, and he said, well, if I take it, it's going to be bitter in my mouth. But if that bitterness is going to kill me,
what's the use?
then it's not worth it. People are dying of this suffering, right? So to what extent are we willing to let people die and suffer or their future busted? So is there not a different combination of policies that could take us to where we are? And that should be the debate, right? But they have taken this policy of what I would call thinner. There is no alternative. As if the policy package they have is the best way to go there. It's not open to debate. Yes, you can say, oh, let's go this way. But there are always alternatives. And we can say, how do we mix cost and gain, welfare, timing, so that we can reach that same place with less pain? So that is the first thing to do. Another thing to do is that if you are asking us to bear pain as citizens, is the ruling class and the politicians, are they bearing pains? Because if they are bearing pains and visibly, and we can see that they've cut down the cost of corruption, they are getting less from the government, and they are bearing the pain, then we all know we are in these things together. But there's no indication that the ruling class, the politicians, the governors have changed their ways. So it becomes, it's an ideological pronouncement. That's why I started with, when they give them credit, they are good in communication. But people should realize one thing, right? There is difference between information and news, right? So information when you release stories, events, data onto people, that you are giving them information. The information become news if it adds value to the people. Because all of us can receive certain information, right? It becomes news to me, becomes value added. If I can use that information, let's say I'm a stock dealer, then the news I'm getting about that company enables me to create wealth. Right? So the government is communicating a lot. But the question is, are they giving us information, data that is making, we can use it to make changes in our life, to add value? Because when we say news value, if somebody that says I'm the director of the African Studies Center at Boston University, it may be information to people who don't know. But for most people, what is the value of that? Except the person needs to deal with me in a particular capacity. So the government is releasing a lot of information, they are releasing a lot of data, but the question is, what is the value added? What is the news value of what they're telling us? And for the average Nigerian, it will translate into a change in their welfare. Because I keep saying this thing, if President Tinubu is sincere, and those around him are sincere, when he was in government, his idea of judging economic policy and budget was simple. He said at that time that I'm a Nigerian, and that if a government policy does not take care of my own interest, is not directed at one's welfare, I cannot pronounce it good. Because when you talk of national interest, somebody then asks him, sir, is that not national interest? Am I not part of the nation? So why is he not taking care of my interest? So we should apply the same policy to him. Why shouldn't every Nigerian ask the question, is my interest in your budget? Is my interest in your borrowings? Is my interest in whatever I do? How does that affect me? And that is the issue of the value, right? He was asking, the president has released the budget, is information. He will now say, what is the value to me? What is the news to me? That's the same thing economics asks, would think in terms of welfare. What is the value of what is being done, or the policy? How does it translate into increasing the welfare function of the average Nigerian?
Okay, I mean, very, very, very interesting. So you did mention, Prof, the role of the governors, and I was also going to bring that up, especially, this your concept of gross domestic happiness. The governors have responsibility for education, they have responsibility for health, they even have responsibility for agriculture. How much of the blame regarding the suffering, the economic suffering that the people are undergoing, how much of the blame should we ascribe to some of those governors, Prof?
Well, the governors have their own share of the burden. But let us remember, Nigeria does not truly run a federal system. Power is concentrated at the center. So the president cannot hide behind the fact that, the governors are responsible. Yes, they're responsible. We need to accuse them. But he's the father of the nation. He is the head. And we should hold him responsible, because part of being a president is that you can come out with policy measures, incentives, the way you allocate your budget to allocate the money in your budget to create the necessary incentives, to create the enabling environment that will quickly change things around, to hold the governors accountable, to call them out, right? Because ultimately he bears the responsibility. The buck stops at his desk, because the idea that he can hide, or they will say the governors, yeah, that is true. Constitutionally, they have some powers, but ultimately he bears responsibility. What is it that he can do with his policies to direct things, to affect? The federal government still has a lot of power, a lot of things to create the kind of situation, or to quicken things, and to be out there to show himself to be on the side of the masses. I don't understand the president, right? When last is he really out talking to the people, right? Telling them he cares, that sense of empathy. Nigerians look at him as if he has no empathy, right? He does, as a person I've met him. But how does he translate that into people believing that this is a man that cares? How many people believe that Tinubu is the kind of person, like the American will say, is he the kind of president you can hang around to have a bottle of beer, or maybe coffee or anything? It doesn't come across as somebody who is like your next door neighbor, who cares about the welfare. I think that is what is lacking. If in Buhari's time, people felt his body language did not show that he cared. In Tinubu, we're not even seeing any body language to descend there. He seems to be in some faraway place, and he's taking his job to be that of merely a technocrat who stays in a room with his technical experts to call policy. He should be out there talking to the people, incentivizing them, mobilizing them, and telling them there is hope. We can make it together. It needs to be a popular leader.
Well, I mean,
that's what this country needs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like you said, you and I know the president personally, and I'm sure that you agree that, of course, you can certainly hang out with the president. You and I don't drink beer. I don't know what the president drinks, but my point is that, yeah, he is certainly an amiable personality. But you are right, Nigerians have not really seen that. I agree with you in terms of the way is being communicated, and in the way that he himself is managing the communication. I know that you gave them a credit for the communication, but I thought, for instance, when the president went to, I think it was one of his foreign trips to Paris, and then came back to all the news of what was happening in Benue and Plateau, some of the very devastating killings, I thought that it would have been useful for the president to come on the video to express empathy, but all that we got was a statement. So I see your point that people are not aware that, I mean, the administration is not representing his personality in that sense. But I want us to move on or still on the issue of the governors. Some of the things that this administration says at the federal level is that governors are getting a lot more money. And I think, to be fair to the president, he has called the governors out a few times. He says that governors have a lot more money from the allocation, and this is true in terms of the raw cash. Why hasn't that been translated to the people, Prof?
Yeah, but you see, so it brings me to the point talking about this issue of ethics of development and the biopolitics, right? If there is no change in orientation from the federal government to make people that there's a new sheriff and that we take the ethics of governance, ethics of development seriously, it would translate into new ways of doing things. If we take the issue that we're interested in biopolitics, in the welfare, the life making of the people, it will translate. You see, the issue, and development economists or development ethicists have said this a lot. The issue that when you are talking about development, it don't start with money. You see, the focus is because I'm giving them money, things will happen. You start with understanding the people, their welfare, you mobilize them, and then money comes in, right? I mean, take the instance of in the Bible, Jesus Christ feeding the 5,000 people. Remember, his disciples, their first focus was, "Sir, Master, we don't have the money. Where are you going to get money to feed the people?" Right? So that was the approach. So they focus on money. If only somebody could give them money. What did he do? He did the first two things he said is important. He said, ask them what they have. And somebody brought, and he said, let them sit together. So what is he doing? Let them sit together means they were strangers there, but he's trying to form communal bond. Let them know themselves. Let that trust exist. Then what did they have? So they came out with what they had. He took what they had, small, and then he added his own technology to it, which in this case, the power of miracle.
Right.
And that technology, they now ate, and there was something left. That means that there's something left for tomorrow. That's how development should take place.
I remember as we move along that at the APC National Summit that was held last week, the president actually again, which excited me, spoke about indiscipline and corruption. But I agree with you that we haven't seen enough of actually doing that. But it's clear that he himself understands that we got to deal with discipline and that we got to deal with corruption. There's no doubt about that. What we haven't seen is demonstration on his part and his administration, like you said, to call them out and to impose consequences. I agree with you entirely on that. But I want us to move on. Do you think that the borrowing plan, so the president submitted a borrowing plan this week, another about $21 billion. And, there have been quite a lot of buzz in the polity about that. The debt is going to go out and all of that. What is your own take on the idea of, this new borrowing plan and the whole idea of, borrowing to fund development? What's your take, specifically and generally, Prof?
Yeah, okay. So according to some estimate, the amount of borrowing they're doing is about 60% of expected about 50 to 60% of their budget. So that is high. That if we are financing our budget projection up to that amount of borrowing, the issue is I don't have any knee-jerk reaction to borrowing, right? Because you can capitalize a company either through equity or through bonds, right?
Yeah.
But what I wanted to see, if they're really sincere, they'll say, okay, we are borrowing 21 billion. These are the set of projects that 21 billion will finance over a certain period of time, and this is the interest we are expected to pay. And at the end of, let's say, 3 years, 5 years, depending on the flow, then we will break even. So that kind of transparency, then we know that we are borrowing to execute projects that have a future payoff, like a return. We are going to break even, and future generation is going to enjoy. But when you just borrow, and people feel like, oh, that would be another avenue for some ministers or somebody to embezzle money. People don't believe in you. But if you are borrowing to finance genuine projects that have return that people can see, so they should make that kind of plan available. We are borrowing this money. This is where it's going to go. It's not going to be diverted into other places. And this is the timeline. They can do the calculation at what point they're going to break even, and this is going to come in, and what will be the larger effect. When I worked on Wall Street and went M&A, went to acquire a company, would do a spreadsheet showing the profit from T0 to 5 or even up to 20 years, and say, what is the value added this kind of thing will be. We work out that kind of system. And that's why my first 2 books that I wrote ever in my life in 93, published in 1994, was on financial statement analysis and bank valuation, showing even when a bank wants to acquire another bank or doing financial analysis of a company, these are the way you set up the analysis, right? So we have that knowledge, and there are many people in Nigeria who can do that, who would do it better than me. So they should lay this out and then show us that they can hold themselves accountable. We can hold them accountable. But without that, and just saying borrowing is this. Then so there's that they can lay out that, and that would tell us that they are serious. But even if they lay out that, right, there's still a problem. Do they have the execution capacity and determination? And will that carry Nigerians forward? This is the reason I say so. I read in the news that the president, the Villa, is going to acquire solar panels or so. I don't know if you heard that. They're going to...
Yes. It's in the news, yes.
You see, there's nothing wrong in acquiring solar, but the message is sent to many Nigerians that this government is not serious, right? Because this is a government that was criticizing Goodluck time, and so far, passenger, that they're going to make the power grid and NEPA or its equivalent work. That announcement tells Nigeria that they've given up hope on that. That if the president cannot even make NEPA or to work for the Aso Rock, and that they're going to acquire solar power, it means that they're giving up. Why can't they put all the effort to make sure that there's light in Aso Rock all the time? And they're acquiring that. Why can't that just be a backup, right? So is it that kind of message? And then why can't we have 2 years they've been in power? The electricity situation has not dramatically improved. So you see, so you may say you want to go and borrow, but people don't believe in your executive capacity to deliver on the project for which you are borrowing, because you cannot even provide steady electricity for yourself in Aso Rock, and you are going for solar. Then the ordinary Nigerians that cannot do not have the means to have solar, right? So you see, so these are some of they are communicating, but they're not adding value. Why are you telling us you are acquiring solar power? What is the value to that? Does it tell us in any valuable sense that the country is moving towards better supply of power? Rather, it sent a negative message. No matter what they thought it was going to do, it sent a negative message that we shouldn't expect power from this government. They're not going to do it so soon.
Let's move on to some of the political, assessment. So last week, the APC held a national summit where it turned out that the entire party the governors, the National Assembly caucus of the party, and ultimately the National Working Committee, led by the party chairman himself, announced what I think is a vote of confidence, but essentially saying that the president is already endorsed for the election in 2027. Now, my take, and then you will comment, is that I didn't see that as a big deal, because normally it's going to be very difficult for a sitting president not to get a second term. However, there are worries about the fact that the party itself, all of them, the senators, the House of Rep people, the governors, and of course the NWC, we are willing to officially and openly, bring in the issue of elections in the midterm. They didn't even wait for the third year. What's your take, Prof?
Yeah, you see, this is why, as I said, in the debate side, democracy, right, that is the president committed to democratic principle. Yes, an incumbent will normally get elected in most other places, right? But if you're still committed in this, but when the whole party infrastructure comes out and declare him without waiting for the primary season to begin, or even to have a pretense of a primary, it becomes like a communist one-party system. So the one party that they're promising us, you see how it's going to go? It's going to operate like a totalitarian one-party system where the whole apparatus of the government comes out in support of one person. Why can't they even pretend? Says, okay, wait, we're going to go through primaries, no person comes up. So that kind of declaration, so what at the state level too, then the party is going to declare the governor. What same thing can happen at the level of the House of Assembly up to the Senate, right? So it says so that is the issue. It smacks of the old Soviet, North Korea and all these ways of doing things where the whole party comes up and crowns people ahead of time. Even what if there's somebody, even if it's not going to win, give them be an independent arbiter, the National Working Committee, and let people go out. But for them to come out 2 years before and declare all options closed, you see what I told you about the mentality of the Tinubu government about this TINA, there is no alternative. So when even they make policy, they are not looking for alternative arguments of how it could be done. Now they brought it to politics, right? There's no alternative to Tinubu. No matter what happens, there's no alternative. He's rubber stamped into office. So with the one-party system, we're going to wake up one day. Why even bother to have an election? Whom you have this, or we're all going to go, and 99%, like the Soviet Union or North Korea, would vote for him. I'm not saying it's exactly going to do that, but the optics and the message it sends is that if he's confident, he should allow his party people to contest. I'm sure he will win. One thing I know about this president is that having worked with him closely 10 years ago, he's a consumer politician. He knows what it takes to win an election. He has the resources. He will win. So, but why this make feel like we are back to the old Soviet Union where the whole party, and that's what frightens people about one-party system, right? All of a sudden, there are no alternative voices, right? Why is it doing that? Why is he doing that to himself when he knows he can still win his party primaries? Why is everybody coming to? And that's what bothers people, that he has not only captured the party machinery, he has captured, is the first president who appears to have control over the three arms of government.
Yeah, I mean, well, I do understand the fears that have been expressed, but quite frankly, Prof, I will be shocked if we ever, let me just put it very clearly, I don't think Nigeria will ever become a one-party state, regardless of what, is going on now. I think our politics is so ethnically endemic, elite differences endemic. There are a lot of divergences that will never give up for the emergence of a one-party state. But I see your point that, what kind of signals is being sent. When the president was speaking at that summit, I was hoping that the president was going to say that, look, I mean, we don't need a one-party state, but it was a little bit ambivalent, and even gave the impression that he's enjoying, all of these things that is going on. And so I'm a little bit worried about that. But I am not worried, Prof, that Nigeria will become a one-party state. Not at all. Your take?
Yeah. No, I mean, I gave an interview 2 weeks ago, and I said I'm not in support of one party, and I don't think I gave the same as reasons you gave about pluralism, because they were asking me a question to react to President Goodluck that said we can properly design a one-party system, and I said no one should properly design his or her own oppression, right? Yeah. So I said that in that report. So it's not going to happen in that way. But already, in a certain sense, or maybe two ways of looking at it, this country already operates a one-party system. The one party of the ruling elite of the class, right? So that what we have is factions, not ruling parties, factions of the same ruling class. You and I were there at Harvard when Vice President Oshibajo gave the talk years ago at Harvard in Nigeria, and I was a respondent to his
lecture.
And he said it clear that, look, within the upper class, the ruling class, there is no ethnicity, Yoruba, Hausa, or religion or Muslim. They all collude to loot Nigeria's money, right? So they're already one class. So there's not really any party that's challenging the hegemony of the ruling class. What we have is factions, and that probably is what may be leading President Tinubu astray, to think that because he sees the ruling class through one lens, and he knows what it takes to move them. If you give them access to loot, if you give them money, you can buy almost anybody. That is what he's thinking. But it's a dangerous move, because within even that ruling class, yes, as much as they are one, they use ethnicity and religion as an instrument of class struggle, because they all know the power of incumbency. That if you have access to the office of presidency, you can do a lot. The president of Nigeria today could make you a billionaire in dollar if he wants to. I mean, that is the level of power that they have. You could allocate oil blocks to you will sell it and you make money, or anything can happen. So the presidency is very powerful, and because we don't operate a true federal system, and that's why everybody is fighting. So one of the ways we can ensure that we don't move towards this one party is to begin to look for a true federal system where there will be the power will be just decentralized at different places. And I thought the president was going to do that. It was sounding as if he was going to decentralize the power at the top, right? Begin to move towards a true federal system.
I agree entirely, and we have called out that situation. There is no way that is a benefit to us as a people. And I mean, since you raised that issue, I know that you are from Rivers State, and I know that actually you've been recently elected as the worldwide president of the Ijaw Diaspora Council. Do you think that move by the president, what is the political game? We all of us know that the president is a consummate politician. Somebody described him as the owner of the political game. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It's political acumen. But I've been trying to figure out, how does that move in Rivers State, suspending an elected governor and the House, how does that send a positive reflection of him to the people of Rivers State? Or what do you think is the game politically, Prof?
I don't think, from my talking to the people, I don't think they take that in a positive way, by and large. the majority of them, I mean, by and large, the bulk of them do not think that is a great move, right? Because he has alienated the people from his south. Whether Sim Fubara, Governor Sim Fubara, was elected duly or not, but he has come to be their governor. To remove him because he has an internal fight with Wike, and that's why people see it, right? It seems like an overreach, right? And so in that sense, the president appears to have overstepped his bounds. He may have the legal means, and that's lawyers to argue, and they're still debating about that, but he has overstepped the moral limits of his office to show himself to be one-sided for another person. And in a democracy, to bring in somebody from another state, who is not part of the state, to say, to come and rule them. He couldn't find even somebody within the state. He may have his political reason. It sets a very dangerous precedent. Now, so having said that, politically, people see it as, you know what, he wants to capture the state, to win the state at all costs. We can help him to win it in the way they define winning. Let's leave it that. So he won. He wants to make sure that he repeats the same thing for 2027. So that seems to be the obvious political move. And also, Rivers State has been unfortunate, right from Odili to Amechi to Wike. The story has been that people at the center have always relied on the governors of Rivers State to massively use state money to finance their re-election. So that has been the story, at least the story on the street. Odili did it with Obasanjo.
I remember then they used to say that Peter they pay.
Yeah, yes. And
that was the meaning of PDP then. They said Peter they pay.
So you find Amechi doing with Buhari and Wike doing it with Tinubu and still more. So for Rivers people, it's a painful thing that the resources of our state are always siphoned to finance this, or to finance the political ambition of Rivers governor. Every Rivers governor, with the amount of money they have, immediately begins to think that they'll be president or they'll be vice president. So they think that the way to get there is to spend money. And they've all fallen into that trap. And Wike had fallen into that trap. And now with Fubara not supporting him, he feels that is a threat, right? So if they remove Fubara or put somebody or browbeat him, he might then be in a position to support their game. I mean, that is the most credible way to read what they've done.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Our time is fast spent, but I have this last question that I would like you to take very quickly. I think we have just about 1 or 2 minutes. The defections that is happening from PDP specifically to APC. The governor of Akwa Ibom State, while trying to explain his own intended defection, he made a point that seems reasonable to quite a few people, including myself. I wanted to get your view on it. The governor said that, look, I don't want a situation where when we get to 2027, we don't know who is the chairman of the party or the secretary. There are disputes. 2 people are holding claim to being the secretary, and that could mean that when the nomination is done, even if he wins the election, that somebody could bring a technicality and say, oh, this guy is not the secretary, and then everything goes into tailspin, which happened actually in 2019, I believe, in Zamfara, and in a few cases. Do you think that kind of explanation is a reasonable point that defines where PDP has come to today, to almost a comatose situation? Last word, Prof.
Well, I mean, he has given his reason, and as a governor, if he thinks that is the most important thing, he wants to that spot into defect. That is his own thing. But the question we should ask that PDP or Labour, all these people are not imploding for no reason. Right. So we might see the hand of Esau, in the but the real thing is the hand of Jacob somewhere, living in one of these rocks or so that is moving all that. So that is issue that, and that is also part of this one-party system. That why are we interested in weakening every other party? I mean, it may politically, somebody will say it makes sense to weaken your opponent so you win. But as a country, when we don't have healthy debate, when we don't have healthy competition, that is the issue. Why is this party imploding? Why are some governor in both parties controlling two parties at some state level?
At the same time.
Yes, it's the same time. So these are the signs that give the impression to the people that there's something more than what we see. But anyway, the governor, that may be his opinion, but it's not believable, because we all know that people go over to wherever they want purely for their political calculations and the ability to stay in power. It's not because of what is going to happen. He's a leader. Why have they not reorganized the party? Why can't they intervene? And if they've reorganized and they're failing, what is happening? Because in Nigeria, remember, people do something because there's always a political motive, or we have these parties of governors or president undermining and sponsoring people in other parties to undermine their ability to contest. So why are we not looking into that?
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. It's been a very exciting conversation. I wish we could continue, but the time is fast spent. And thank you so much for your contributions to national discourse. Thank you so much for your service. I know that you've served the country even though you're abroad. And now that you've even been elected as the worldwide president of the Ijaw Diaspora Council, I'm sure that we're going to be seeing more of you. And thank you for always coming to Inside Sources.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right. And there you have it, another edition of Inside Sources. Like we always say, Nigeria will prevail. Nigeria will prevail because we will not relent. We will keep on pushing the issues, and we believe that we'll get a break someday. My name is Laolu Akonde. Thank you for watching, and by the grace of God, I'll see you at the next edition.